In 1221, Mongol armies chased after the Khwarezmian prince Jalaluddin Mingburnu. The Mongols under Genghis Khan had pursued the prince throughout Central Asia and were now pushing towards the Indus River. At the Battle of the Indus, on November 24th, Mongol and Khwarezmian armies clashed. The battle ended in disaster for the remnant Khwarezmians. Prince Jalaluddin was forced across the Indus, where he would flee deeper and deeper into India. This particular battle would foreshadow events to come. Mongol armies had now positioned themselves on the borders of South Asia. Should any particular leader dare to cross the mighty Indus, then the riches of India would be theirs for the taking. And so, for over a century, Mongol armies would push into the Indian subcontinent over and over again, hoping to reap the benefits of Hindustan's immense wealth. By the early 13th century, the various Mongol tribes had united under a single banner led by Genghis Khan. Through wars of conquest, they had spread in a number of directions across Eurasia. First starting out on the steppe, before moving towards other polities like Jin China. The emergence of a Mongol presence near India traces back to their invasion of the Central Asian Khwarezmian Empire. In 1219, after a major political dispute, Genghis rallied his forces and waged war against Muhammad II, Shah of the Khwarezmians. The steppe riders were quick, decisive, and destructive. They marched on to Bukhara, pillaged Samarkand, and left terror wherever else they went. After the fall of Urgench, the Khwarezmian capital, Muhammad II fled north and died on an island in the Caspian Sea. His son Jalaluddin fled to Afghanistan, and then, after dealing the Mongols a major defeat at the Battle of Parwan, fled further east to the Indus River. This set the stage for the first major Mongol presence in India. In 1221, Genghis Khan himself met Jalaluddin's army. To fully appreciate how serious the Mongols were, the Khan had brought his sons, Chagatai and Ogadai, as commanders. According to the writings of the 13th century Persian historian Ata Malik Juvaini, the Mongols surrounded the Khwarezmian army in a crescent shape, while the Indus River blocked any possible retreat. Jalaluddin, recognizing the dire situation he was in, ordered his men to charge. Despite the impossible odds, even Juvaini admits that the prince fought like an angry lion. Eventually, seeing that the situation was hopeless, Jalaluddin rushed onto a horse and galloped away from the battlefield. When he was confronted by the waters of the Indus, he dove in without hesitation. Although many Mongol warriors sought to chase the prince further, Genghis Khan was evidently impressed by the man's deeds and halted any further action. The Mongols had defeated the Khwarezmian army and began to return to Central Asia. The Battle of the Indus marked their total victory against the Khwarezmian Empire, and also symbolized the beginning of a Mongol presence on the borders of India. In the years to come, more armies would attempt to cross the mighty waters. Not too long after this battle, the Mongols sent additional armies to hunt down the renegade prince. This development alarmed many of the political powers of the region. In modern-day Pakistan, small states like the Sultanate of Makran and the city of Multan were keenly aware of the Mongols and their invasion of Khwarezm. A Mongol army under Turbay Tokshin crossed the Indus and began to ravage the area of Sindh. When Jalaluddin had heard news that the Mongols had dispatched a new army after him, the prince urged the emir of Multan for assistance. Perhaps fearing a Mongol reprisal, the emir, Kubucha, refused Jalaluddin's request and forced the prince out of his realm. In 1222, the Mongols approached the city of Multan and put it under siege. For 40 days, Turbay Tokshin ordered mangonels to destroy the city walls, and soon his men were positioned near the city's citadel. The extreme heat, however, appears to have forced them to abandon the siege, and Tokshin ordered his warriors to retreat back to Central Asia, not before pillaging the area around Lahore as they moved back. Although the Mongols had not pushed far in this particular campaign, shockwaves could be felt throughout India. The young Delhi Sultanate was especially cognizant of these developments. During the Mongol conquests of Khwarezm, the Delhi Sultanate was led by Shams al-Din Iltutmish, a former Turkish slave general of the last Ghurid Sultan. Iltutmish reacted quickly to the Mongol foray into India. In 1228, just 6 years after the siege of Multan, he defeated the Emir Kubucha and annexed the city. The Delhi Sultan would spend much of his reign expanding his empire and consolidating his realm before passing away in 1236. Mongol interest in India would rise once more shortly before Iltutmish's death. In 1234, Ogedai Khan, Chengiz's son and successor, called for a Kurultai, a meeting of the many Mongol elites and military commanders. It was characterized by a month of feasting and similar activities. According to the Persian historian Rashid ad-Din, one night a young prince named Monkey approached Ogedai and urged him to wage war. Impressed by the prince's words, Ogedai announced plans for a series of conquests. Armies would ride to Russia, Hungary, and other places to enforce their rule. Unfortunately for India, a Mongol army was headed in their direction as well. The timing of this invasion could not be better. After the death of Iltutmish in 1236, the Delhi Sultanate was beset by internal divisions and weak rulers. Iltutmish's heirs were more eager to turn on one another, and so in 1241, Ogedai ordered his armies to invade. A leader named Hokator was told to ride into Kashmir, while another named Dair Noyan would invade Lahore. Lahore fell to the Mongol armies, and soon much of the Indus River valley was taken as well. The invasion of Kashmir saw similar successes. Hokator captured the settlement of Srinagar, and the Mongols appointed a governor to maintain control over the region. These conquests would have major cultural repercussions for the Mongol Empire. Kashmiri monks and scholars became part of their bureaucracy. The presence of Kashmiri individuals in Mongol courts would add to the polity's cosmopolitan nature, and now they could be counted among the various Chinese, Uyghur, Persian, and Arab scholars that flourished in such times. Kashmiris would provide the Mongols key information on topics such as religion and astronomy. During the times of the Ilkhanate, Mongols from Kashmir helped create an era of Buddhist revival in Persia, and a number of scholarly discussions took place between Muslims and Indian Buddhists. In fact, the historian Rashid ad-Din would collaborate with a Kashmiri monk named Kamalashri, who provided the Persian writer with information on the Buddha's life. It should be stated that Mongol hold over these regions was tenuous. The lands of Sindh and Kashmir were far from the centers of Mongol rule, and so shortly after the departure of Dair Noyan and Hokatar, problems began to emerge. Ogedai's death in 1241 may have acted as an inciting incident for many rulers in this part of India. Not too long after, a Kashmiri leader named Ramadeva launched a revolt, while Delhi Sultan Muizz ad-Din Bahram went on the offensive. The Mongol territorial gains were quickly reversed. Soon after, the Mongols found their opportunity to re-enter the scene. In 1248, a son of the Delhi Sultan Iltutmish fled to the Mongol court. This prince, named Jalaluddin Masud, petitioned the Mongols for assistance in retaking northern India. With a casus belli in hand, the new Mongol Khan, Monkey, dispatched an army to invade the lands of Sindh and Kashmir once more. Led by a general named Sali Noyan, the Mongols arrived in India around 1257. Once in the region, Sali Noyan was able to capture the cities of Multan and Uch. From there, he turned north and attacked the lands of Kashmir. Again, Srinagar was put under siege and many of its inhabitants were massacred. Jalaluddin Masood was appointed by the Mongols as governor of Sindh, and some Kashmiri rulers may have signed treaties with Möngke Khan, though scholars continue to debate on the degree to which the Mongols actually controlled Kashmir in this time. By this point, significant portions of northern India came under some sort of Mongol dominion. Once again, a weakened Delhi Sultanate, plagued by infighting, had given the Mongols the opportunity they needed for incursions into the region. However, by luck, the Mongols would soon split into their own pieces. After the death of Möngke Khan in 1259, they would engage in an internal conflict over his successor. The Toluid civil war would cannibalize the single empire that Genghis had established and provided the Delhi Sultanate with necessary breathing room. The breakup of the Mongol Empire coincided with the rise of Ghiyasuddin Balban, the 9th Sultan of Delhi. Under Balban, stemming the Mongol threat became one of the Sultanate's chief concerns. In fact, before becoming Sultan himself, Balban had aided the previous Sultan Nasir-ad-Din Mahmud in establishing communication channels with the Mongols. In 1260, this resulted in a dialogue between the Sultan and Hulagu Khan, the Mongol ruler of Persia and the Middle East. Hulagu forbade Salinoyan from further raids into India, which gave the Delhi Sultanate necessary breathing room. For Hulagu, a peace agreement with the Delhi Sultanate meant that he would not have to worry about his southeastern frontier, an especially paramount factor during the massive Toluid civil war. After ascending the throne in 1266, Balban quickly set off a series of military reforms. He reorganized and expanded the army and changed military salaries from land allotments to cash payments. He then increased defensive capabilities in his western frontier by building new forts, establishing an army that would focus solely on the Mongol border, and avoided major invasions to his east so that the Mongols would not have an opportunity to attack at the same time. Then the Sultan moved on the offensive, recapturing parts of Sindh and Punjab, including the cities of Lahore and Multan. Though Balban would be successful in deterring a large-scale Mongol attack, raids would still occur, particularly from more adventurous leaders. One group, known as the Karaunas, would organize regular attacks into Sindh, with most of their raids focusing on the capture of slaves who would be sold to markets in Khorasan. The traveller Ibn Battuta would later report that this practice would still remain prevalent in the 1300s, well into the era of Mongol Islamization. As previously mentioned, Balban would be successful in deterring Mongol activity, but this period of relative stability would not last forever. The end of the Mongol Civil War resulted in 4 major successor states, and these states were given the time needed to stabilize and consolidate. One of these polities, the Chagatai Khanate, soon came under an energetic leader named Dua Khan, who would once more send Mongol armies to invade the lands of the Delhi Sultanate. Mongol forces were already making inroads against the Sultanate by the late 1280s, with Multan, Diupalpur, and Lahore facing attacks in 1285. Not too long after, the Delhi Sultanate faced further stress after Sultan Muizzuddin Tayqubad was overthrown by a Turkic officer named Jalaluddin Firuz Khalji. This coup would not lead to any energetic movements against the Mongols. The reign of the first Khalji Sultan was marked by poor policy and military failures. Likely in response to this chaos, Dua Khan intensified his aggressive actions towards the Sultanate. His armies would invade 6 times between 1292 and 1306. In response to this turmoil, in 1296, Jalaluddin Firuz Khalji was overthrown in a coup by his nephew Alauddin. The Mongols would have seen this as their opportunity to strike. So in 1297, they attempted to capture the areas of Punjab and the Ganges Valley. At the Battle of Jaran Manjur, the Delhi Sultanate was successful in beating back the Mongol aggressors. 2 years later, the Mongols crossed the Indus again and supposedly marched through Sindh unopposed. This time they intended on capturing Delhi itself. Mongol forces massed themselves on the outskirts of the city, with reports estimating that the invading army had around 200,000 soldiers. The Delhi Sultan met the Mongols with his own army. Alauddin's general, a man named Zafar Khan, appeared to have led a desperate charge against the Chagatai army. Known as the Battle of Khilji, Zafar Khan's risky assault appeared to work initially. The Mongols retreated, and Zafar's men quickly set off to pursue. However, in typical steppe fashion, the Mongols had employed a feigned retreat, and once Zafar Khan and his army found themselves in an unfavorable environment, the Mongols turned back and slaughtered them. Although the Battle of Khilji was a disaster, Alauddin maintained his composure and met the Mongols again in a second battle, where he defeated his adversaries and forced them to return to Central Asia. The Chagatai Khanate did not wait long, and in 1303 another army made its way across the Indus. This time they put the city of Delhi under siege. At the time, Alauddin's army was involved in a campaign to the east and the situation was dire. For 2 months, the Mongols attempted to starve out the citizens of Delhi, but for unknown reasons, their commander then lifted the siege and returned back to Chagatai lands. Additional Chagatai attacks would commence in 1305 and 1306, but these campaigns also ended in failure. The invasions of the 1290s and 1300s forced Alauddin to reconsider his military position. Like his predecessor Ghiyasuddin Balban, Alauddin responded to the Mongol threat by stabilizing his situation and enacting reforms. He created economic measures that would deter popular rebellions while curbing the nobility from intrigue and sedition. In the military space, Alauddin repaired a number of forts and walls in Sindh. More dramatically, he increased the number of troops in his army and promoted officers based on merit. His goal was to fortify his frontiers to prevent any other direct attacks on Delhi. These reforms were timed very well, because the death of Dua Khan in 1307 coincided with a significant decline in Chagatai attacks on the Delhi Sultanate. Alauddin's reforms and the death of Dua Khan meant that the Sultanate could even go on the offensive, and the Sultan conducted a number of counter-raids against the Mongols around this time. From here, Mongol attacks on India decreased substantially, and there was a lull in activity until the 1320s. Between 1320 and 1323, a Mongol commander named Zulaji invaded Kashmir. This particular invasion is considered to be one of the bloodiest, with some scholars estimating that the Mongol leader entered the region with around 70,000 troops. Kashmiri leaders attempted to bribe Zulaji to avoid any bloodshed, but it appears that this presence of loot only incentivized him to continue his conquest. Many political figures fled the region and resistance appears to have been limited. The Mongols captured a large number of slaves, burned food stocks, and left Kashmir in ruin. The level of destruction was so severe that certain parts of Kashmir were reduced to uncultivated wasteland. The final attacks from Mongol armies would come in the mid-1320s. Here, northern India was faced by 2 major incursions. In Kashmir, the army of Zulaji invaded once more in 1326, though this time Kashmiri leaders under Queen Kota Rona managed to push the Mongols back. The following year, a Mongol leader named Tarmashirin pushed deep into the Delhi Sultanate and even reached the outskirts of the capital city. They would wreak havoc and destruction as they crossed the Sindh and Gujarat. Beyond this, scholars note that there is relatively little information about this particular campaign, apart from the fact that the Mongols were eventually defeated by Sultan Muhammad ibn Tughlaq. From this point on, large-scale Mongol movements into India faded. Though it is likely that some bands of Mongols roamed across the borders, there are no mentions of any major military engagement. The collapse of the Ilkhanate in 1335 and the division of the Chagatai Khanate in 1347 probably deterred any further mass engagement. Instead, various Mongol commanders engaged with the Delhi Sultanate diplomatically, offering gifts and accepting treaties. Through these invasions, the Mongols became well acquainted with the world of South Asia. In many cases, these affairs were bloody and led to the deaths of thousands. However, they also led to the consolidation of the Delhi Sultanate. Major reforms that were intended to stem the Mongol tide would play a key role in developing institutions important to the governance of the realm. For the Mongols, this interaction with South Asia led to their own cultural and scientific impacts. Various Indian peoples, such as the Kashmiris, could be found at Mongol courts. Trade between the Mongols and Indian ports prospered. Importantly, the end of the Mongol invasions and disruptions to the Ilkhanate and Chagatai Khanate would set the stage for later invasions by figures such as Timur and Babar, who most likely were influenced by these early Mongol invasions of India. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As usual, big thank you to my patrons for your continued support. And I want to give a shout out to Nomads and Empires podcast for his help in scripting part of this video. Please make sure to check out his podcast, the link is in the description below. Until next time, peace!